Hey everyone, welcome to Sociastrology. Today we're going to take a look at the full moon in Leo, which is taking place on the 1st of February of 2026. So we'll look at this from a collective perspective on the global level, and then we will take this through sign by sign. And those horoscopes will be time-stamped, and they are primarily for your rising sign because then they will align with the whole sign house in your chart that I'm speaking to in that horoscope. But also feel free to check out your sun sign as well if you would like. And also, before we dive into it, if you don't mind giving the video a thumbs up or a hype if you wind up enjoying it, I would really greatly appreciate it. So with all of that said, let's go ahead and dive into it. So this full moon is going to be at 13 degrees of Leo. And the only aspects that it's forming are this range of oppositions to the planets which are in Aquarius. So it's opposite the stellium that's in Aquarius. And we did recently do a video over just that stellium. But what we have with this full moon is an energy that we're going to be dealing with for quite some time. And that's going to flavor the horoscopes. I'm going to try and mention this to everyone. I'm sure I will. But it's going to be important to pay attention to around the 1st of February, because not only do we have the Aquarius area of our chart lit up in a way that is going to be pretty much into 2027, but we then also have that Leo sector as very significant. This is why I'm referring to this as the new normal. This is going to be the dominant energy that we're dealing with into 2027, but we're getting a preview of it now. So we want to pay attention to this full moon for what it is, but we also want to pay attention to it as a harbinger of what we're going to be dealing with for the coming year and a half, both due to the Leo energy and the Aquarius energy, which we're going to be getting into here, but also for those sectors of our charts, those houses of our charts that are going to be highlighted and emphasized. There's going to be a lot of change and a lot of movement and a lot of significant events occurring along the lines of the themes of the houses that are lit up. So I definitely recommend paying attention to this, not just as a full moon, but as something to look toward and pay more attention to in the coming year and a half. So Leo, of course, this full moon, this is a fire sign, and we also have this opposition involved. And so this is a very passionate full moon that we're going to be dealing with. Full moons, generally speaking, tend to be periods of time where there is heightened emotion. People's fuses tend to be a little shorter. Events can seem to get out of hand easier under a full moon than during other times. And Leo is also very individual and pretty independent, especially when it's coupled with Aquarius. So there's likely to be a tone of a focus on self, but perhaps even taking that to an extreme of kind of assuming that you're doing all of the things, that you're accomplishing all of the things that you are on your own. And I think when we get into that territory, we can become a little too self-aggrandizing and forget some of the help that we've received along the way. And that's something that I think is going to be important to keep in mind here. And of course, this can be cropping up in the people around us as well. So this is also a sign that is very bold, adventurous, excitable. It's usually going to say yes to things, so we should be pretty fascinated and enthusiastic about what's going on. We should have a pretty strong can-do attitude. Like, self-belief is going to be increased by this full moon for sure, but also leadership. So not just leading ourselves, but also leading others and wanting to show up well, wanting to be perceived well and to make a good impression and to have a good influence and to light a fire under others and encourage them, to be quite affirming to others as well. That opposition is going to complicate that a little bit because that's where we get the obstinate contrarian aspect involved in all of this. Both of these signs can do that in their own way, but especially when they're in a bit of a showdown with each other. And like I said, we're going to be dealing with that kind of thing for a while. So this is going to crop up here and there in the coming year and a half, up to 2 years, really. And I'll tell you exactly why here shortly. But so we can absolutely be butting heads with each other, especially if we are collaborating with someone, if we're working on a project with someone, if we're working with teammates within our workplace. There can be different visions or, for instance, multiple people wanting credit, wanting to shine, wanting to show up, wanting for their vision of how something's going to be chosen. And so there can be a vying for that positive impact of one's contribution. There can also be a level of obstinance in terms of our beliefs and our opinions and our ideas about things and our ideas even about people in our lives. So hopefully we're not defining other people for them through this time. But I think we're also going to see quite a bit of that. So we'll dive in a bit more to what this means collectively. But I do also want to point out this additional factor, which is that on the 26th of January, we have Neptune permanently moving into Aries. We had a short stint of Neptune moving into Aries in 2025. It wound up going backward, retrograde into Pisces again, but now it's permanently in Aries. So this is an additional factor. We've got more fire than we've been working with recently. That Neptune in Aries is also going to be fueling a huge amount of self-belief and individuality and independence. And again, that I can do this on my own. And I will do this on my own. Now, there will be this aspect of rallying people, getting people on board with your ideas, but this is a much less service-oriented Neptune that we're going to be dealing with for the coming 14 years with that one than we've been dealing with over the past 14 years as it's been in Pisces. So that is something to keep in mind, is that some of these themes, especially that which is associated with the fire signs, again, boldness, leadership, showing up, making a strong impression, enthusiasm, this is all getting hyped up quite a bit throughout this period of time. So let's talk about this new normal. These signs, Aquarius and Leo, we're going to be dealing with their energies a lot. I went into a lot of Leo's energy so far, again, wanting to show up, wanting to be supportive, wanting to be supported, but also wanting to view oneself as an individual and to be seen for one's contributions, to be recognized, to make one's mark, to show a lot of pride and courage and heart, to be very self-assertive as well. But let's also talk about how that relates to the Aquarius energy that we're also going to be dealing with a huge amount of in the coming years, which is very collectivist. It has to do with innovation and looking for systematic solutions to things. It very much recognizes that we kind of can't just do things on our own. It is willing to go way outside the lines such that it can become kind of ostracized or even alienated, or it tends to be seen as quirky, unique, maybe a little bit weird. And it can also get really excited about things, but in certainly a bit more of an intellectual or a bit nerdier of a way than Leo does, right? It wants to figure things out. It wants to understand things thoroughly. And it wants to come up with ideas, fixes, solutions, systems, methods that are going to be useful for a long time and are going to build something that's going to last. Because again, both of these are fixed signs. So they do want to stick with something. And that is something that we'll also see, is that that fixed energy is well supported for us. We're getting more in a groove with this energy than we have been for quite some time. And it's definitely going to be more active, which is wonderful, I think, in my opinion. It's going to be more active rather than the kind of stuck in the mud, heavy water and earth energies that we've been dealing with recently, feeling like we're kind of spinning our wheels or we can't quite get something moving along. We're out of that range, but what's cool about this is that we can start to really pick up some leverage and run with something for a while, with the emphasis on the fixed signs that are coming up here and then throughout the year as well. So I would say standing out is going to be a wonderful thing. Can we go too far with that at times? Certainly. But try to make your mark and try to make a unique mark. Try to come up with solutions that maybe haven't been put forth up until this point. There's going to be a lot of unique solutions that are coming up in this year from all different kinds of people. Valuing intelligence, especially when it is able to be blended with a sense of persona or heart or courage. So if someone is both intelligent and courageous, this is going to be their year for sure. And these are the energies that we're going to want to lean toward, even if we don't quite identify primarily as those things. So let me go into why this is sticking around with us for so long, this Leo and Aquarius energy. I already mentioned, it's going to be 14 years that we have Neptune in Aries. We're going to have Uranus moving into Gemini. That's going to be for about 7 years. But we also just got Pluto moving into Aquarius, and that's going to be there for about 20 years until the mid-2040s. So that's solidly there. We're dealing with some of this for a very long time. But we're also then getting the nodal axis here, which is this little horseshoe looking thing. This moves backwards always, and it's the eclipse point. So whenever there's a full moon or a new moon that's close enough to this axis here, it's actually an eclipse. And later in the month on the 17th, we will get a new moon eclipse in Aquarius because it's going to be close enough to that nodal axis to eclipse. With that moving backwards, that is going to be joining, on the north node side, it'll be joining Pluto. So in Aquarius, we will have both the north node and Pluto. And then on the Leo side, we're going to have the south node, because this is always tethered, so it'll be in the opposite sign. And we will have this summer Jupiter moving into Leo. And not only that, but then Mars is going to keep chugging along here for quite some time. It's going to get into Leo, get about to this point in Virgo, and then it's going to retrograde. And we're going to have the South Node and Mars and Jupiter for long stretches of 2027 in particular, but already in 2026, we're going to have that huge emphasis of that energy in Leo as well. So we're going to be dealing with these oppositions for quite some time. The eclipses will remain relevant into 2028, but the Mars and Jupiter will move on in 2027, just to give you those dates. So this is why I say not only are these energies hugely emphasized, but these houses in our charts are going to be hugely emphasized for a while to come, and we're getting a glimpse of what that's going to look like here. So this is very much the new story. It's going to encourage a sense of understanding of our own place in the world. It will point out to us, maybe not in the nicest ways always, but try and remain open to any notions of how you might play small in the world, how you might shrink away from things, how you might avoid the spotlight. It's also going to be highlighting how we can contribute. And I think that that's going to be a big word this year too, is contributing to collaborations. We can take pride in what we individually bring to the table, but if we can blend that with a collective effort, then even better. Then that's honoring both the Leo and the Aquarius side of the equation here. This should also be highlighting, again, the heart and mind aspects of Leo and Aquarius in terms of what truly resonates with us. So what are we really into? What are we really excited about? What do we really want to run with? Where is it that we feel like we best show up and can maintain our sense of excitement and enthusiasm? Again, these signs stick with things for a while. You've ever known an Aquarius and you start talking to them about something that they're passionate about, they've gone way into it. Their interest, their intellectual interest in something is steady, it remains. And they wind up developing very unique and interesting perspectives on things because they're so comfortable with the energy that they're dealing with because they understand it so thoroughly. And so we can see how like a sense of authenticity or eccentricity can show up on either side of this equation too. So embracing the quirky aspects of ourselves, embracing those weird little interests that we have that we can get even a bit obsessive about. Especially with Pluto and Aquarius, we very likely are to get pretty obsessed about our interests and really creating a place for ourselves in the world, knowing where that is, making that mark, etc. That's really going to be the name of the game for us for a while. So one thing I would say is during this full moon in particular, if you can focus in on where your energy is at, how it's being pinged, how it feels a little bit different than usual, you may be able already to work with some of these threads and create some strategy about personal growth, about how you're going to be lifting yourself up. Almost like setting some Leo style resolutions for yourself a little bit later in the year. We have all of this really excellent systematic energy that can come up with a strategy in Aquarius, and it's looking at the Leo energy. So what is it about yourself that you're wanting to get more comfortable with, that you're wanting to get more excited about, that you're wanting to honor more? That I think would be a really wonderful use of this alignment, especially given this middle decan, the middle 10 degrees of Leo. So from 10 degrees of Leo to 20 degrees of Leo, this is strongly associated, this is called a decan, and it's strongly associated with the Six of Wands. In tarot, if you are familiar with that, the energy of that card is around triumph. It's around accepting an elevated place, accepting praise. And so how can we elevate ourselves? How can we take courage and pride in what we're bringing to the table Sometimes that's going to look like doing things a little bit differently. But a lot of how we hold ourselves back or play small, and therefore maybe have a little bit less to take pride in, is not giving ourselves the credit ahead of time that we will be able to rise to a specific occasion. So I would really recommend focusing on that kind of thing during this period of time. And we'll get more into that decan and the kind of technical stuff when we look at this from a global perspective. But let's run through some of these notes here and flesh them out a little bit more. So again, this is the new normal. We're going to be dealing with this kind of energy for a while. There's a major thread of individuality versus collectivism in the Leo-Aquarius axis. And as I said, the best way to handle that is to make a really wonderful contribution to a collective effort, and to take a lot of pride in that, and to show a lot of courage and heart in what you're willing to say, what you're willing to put out there, in the unique contributions that you're willing to make. Maybe this is even sticking up for some people. Leo also has a tendency to take others under its wing and to try to lift them up as well, or at the very least protect them, represent them, and speak for them. And so that may be as well where a lot of people are showing courage and heart. This is also going to, as we'll talk about in the global section, it's going to stir up a lot of protests and a lot of grassroots movements around taking care of people. It's also highly sociable. Both of these signs, Leo certainly wants to be seen and recognized and to show up again to make a great impression. Aquarius, its whole realm basically is the social. So what are the social systems? Are they functional? Do they make sense? What's the collective plan that we're working toward, right? It works on at the very least group level, but very often Aquarius also deals with the societal level and trying to find social solutions on a mass scale. So like social policy, even on a national level or on a community level, perhaps as well. There's also a strong sense of self-assertiveness, but also self-awareness, and that can go both ways. That can certainly be a double-edged sword here. These oppositions in particular, because there's so much like looking straight across at each other, I imagine that our self-awareness will be somewhat reflective to where we're kind of learning about ourselves through being aware of ourselves, learning where we're able to assert ourselves without being too pushy, without shrinking. But what's excellent about this alignment, this axis as well, is that Leo can do the self-assertion thing. It can generate a lot of self-belief. And what's excellent is that that is going to be backed up, if we're utilizing the Aquarius energy too, through knowledge, through a really thorough understanding of what it is that we're doing. And so we don't really need to rely on that self-belief, but we have it there to give us a boost, to represent that knowledge. So if there's been something that you've been shy about initiating, if you've been shy to ask for something, if you've been shy to like put your work on display, if you were a creative type, if you've been shy to suggest some solutions within the workplace because maybe they haven't been tried before, this is a really wonderful energy to do all of that kind of stuff. There's a huge amount of excitement here too. Now, I do think that we're going to wind up seeing this as something of initiative. These are fixed signs. They can initiate things, but they usually get a little caught up in the planning stages, and then they are really excellent at running with something that's already gotten started. However, because we've been dealing with so much earth and water energy recently, which is full-on pretty passive energy, and we have all of this very active, even if it is fixed, energy going on in Aquarius and Leo here, this is probably going to look like a kick in the butt that's getting us to start something up that we're getting excited about. So we may have a bit of a stutter step. We may have a bit of hesitation. We may want to have the plan fully fleshed out before we get started. Try not to get too stuck in that, and try not to worry about, oh, what if I can't change this later? We can change things later, but with the fixed sign emphasis here, we might not be able to see that in this moment. Getting started, I think, is going to be more rewarding than frustrating during this time. Also very adventurous. Again, there's an innovative kind of pioneering quality to Aquarius that's getting very nicely highlighted by Neptune also moving into the sign of the pioneer, Aries, which is very encouraging to that kind of innovative eye of Aquarius, figuring out new solutions, figuring out new things to do, wanting to take advantage of the spark in this moment, to try something new, to be a little daring, maybe again, to do something, especially like in terms of activities, to do something that you haven't done before, or that's just for fun as well. There's also going to be a lot here about display and projection. I hate to say, like, if you know people who tend to go overboard with aspects of self-aggrandizement, things along those lines, you know what I'm getting at here, that's likely to be amplified in them. So this is something to keep in mind. We will be experiencing a boost from this energy, but also people who may not need a boost will also be getting one. So that is something to keep in mind. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of projection of the self upon a group, and kind of vice versa, of like assuming that because you believe a certain thing, that everyone believes that thing. Or the opposite way that this can wind up playing out at times is because everyone believes something or does something a certain way or whatever it is, feeling that you need to do it that way. That is definitely not the case. So trying to watch out for projection, allowing for people to be unique, to be eccentric, people to be themselves, there to be a lot of diversity of ways of doing things and contribution, etc. And trying not to make assumptions or to fill in gaps. That is one of the places that Aquarius can stumble a little bit, is when it's filling in too many gaps. There is also an overcompensatory aspect to this as well. Down here, I pretty much am in the realm of, okay, this is a moon that's on its own, that's full, and it is opposite, like in a somewhat conflictual relationship with all of these other planets as well. That can go somewhat conflictual. It doesn't have to, but where it does, it will look at times like overcompensation, of wanting to like be this special thing that is better than everything else or everyone else, right? Knowing deep down that we're not, we're all the same, but needing to project that or to put that on display, that kind of overcompensation, especially if there are any insecurities underlying this. So both a bit of a risk here of the boost being on that we're all getting, being on top of insecurities. That's where we see that overcompensation, or that is already in like a very ego-driven personality that's probably just going to lift that even further. So there are some edges here. There may also be a sense of needing to be somebody, and that's part of that overcompensation as well. Needing to be special, needing to be more than, needing to be better than, needing like one-upsmanship basically is also a potential thing here. So that's why on a personal level, I think it's going to be great if with the awareness of this full moon, we can really focus on what's the contribution to a collective effort that I'm wanting to make, that way we can keep in sight society and the social and not get too kind of high on ourselves with this. And with Leo and Aquarius, we also have notions of persona, very strong in Leo, and then potential for ostracization in Aquarius. This is a Saturn-ruled sign by traditional rulership, and so it represents the boundary. And we can be outside of that boundary, outside of the quote-unquote acceptable limits, and therefore ostracized or exiled, and feel like we don't belong. So there's, again, this push and pull between needing to be special and be the best and to stand out. But if we do that too much or too hard, we can wind up ostracizing ourselves or alienating ourselves from the group. And usually that's not going to feel so great. So that is something to keep in mind. Also, if you already feel alienated or ostracized, this could potentially provide some really great insight into all of that as well. So in terms of specifically the Leo and Aquarius energies that we're dealing with on a personal level, that's a lot of it, especially on the front end here. We're going to be talking about this so much in the coming year because it's going to repeatedly come up. But I will get more into the nitty-gritty of that as we start to talk about how this is going to impact us on a global level and a political level. And again, really worth paying attention to which houses are these in your chart. So on the global level, again, we have the new normal that we're dealing with. This is the energy that we'll also be dealing with on a global level for quite a while. And it's kind of no wonder. There's going to be issues around, to put it bluntly, self-aggrandizing individuals versus society and the well-being and the sense-making of society, basically. And there will be moments where one or the other seems to get the upper hand, etc. So let's get into this. Specifically with this full moon, because again, it's here as a standalone planet in Leo, and it's in this opposition to all of these different placements. One thing I could see is in mundane astrology, the moon can be a really strong representative of populations. And so because it's the moon that's out here currently, I wouldn't be surprised if there's an interesting quality in the population, the moon here in Leo, of painting with a broad brush the powers that be, and a rejection and an opposition to, like, across the board ruling classes, because of the fact that there's all of these oppositions all together. And there's this kind of looking at like the leadership of countries, the militaries of countries, the, plutocrats within countries, or oligarchs, or whatever you want to call them. And then the culture and the cultural icons, and then the media, and kind of saying like, this is all one thing. This is all together. This is all kind of in cahoots, basically. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the messaging, at least on a personal level, if we're kind of feeling that way, and if we're feeling like, and the population is going to have to deal with this and take this on kind of on our own. Now, it will be worth remembering that the population is ultimately the collectives and things like this. So there are numbers, and no one's going to have to deal with this on their own. And certainly if people try, which someone might, in fact, now that I'm looking at this with that perspective, someone might try some kind of vigilante something. That usually doesn't wind up having a good or strong impact, right? And this axis in the world, especially as the North Node gets closer to Aquarius, there's going to be an emphasis on embracing the growth of collectivism, the growth of population seeing themselves kind of in the same boat together. So this very strong we energy as opposed to the me energy, which is going to get us into some trouble because the South Node is going to be there, etc. So just being out for oneself is not going to be the way. There's going to be a huge amount of lessons for those who wind up going in that direction here. There's also just a huge emphasis on community collective efforts like activism, things like that, humanitarianism, equality, rights. I have individual prerogative here because it's going to be an interesting thing of argumentation around rights and who has the right or the authority to do what, and what are the rights, say the civil liberties and the civil rights of populations and all of the individuals within a population. These are going to be major discussions coming up in many different countries. There's also going to be a major focus on progress, technological progress, but also social progress, a lifting up of people power, generally speaking, and social causes, mutual aid. Online communities are also probably going to be well supported with all of the Aquarius energy that we'll be dealing with. And we'll get a bit of a major preview of that during this full moon and during this Aquarius stellium. Certainly all of the networks, tech stuff, the surveillance, big tech, AI, automation, that's going to be a big aspect of this, especially with Pluto involved over here, where that's where a lot of the power in society seems to come from right now, is the like big tech, oligarch kind of thing. And questions around individual rights with regard to automation and job markets and things like this, as well as like individual privacy rights. I think when it comes to the surveillance and the automation of those kinds of systems, like kind of weaponizing those technology systems against populations, individual rights to privacy are also going to be a major part of that discussion as we get all of this Aquarius Leo energy building up more and more. And on the other side of this, with the Leo energy coming in really strong, especially with this coming into where the South Node is, we don't want to go too hard into Leo. We want to take stock of it. We do want to give ourselves a bit of a boost. We don't want to be playing small, but we definitely don't want to lose sight of Aquarius because of the fact that the North Node is going there. That's the green light. The South Node we could look at as a major caution, like a yellow light of don't overdo this, which is the me aspect as opposed to the we. So we will see major aspects of diminishment of ego around cults of personality, hierarchies. So I want to say here, we might not see a diminishment necessarily of that in this full moon moment. we may actually see a rise of that, of the selfish people that happen to be rulers, happen to be, Leo is a very regal sign. So any sort of executive leadership can be represented by Leo. And we may see that getting really high on its own supply, high on itself, right? And pushing itself beyond the limits of populations. We might not see that blow back quite yet, but this full moon is really laying the groundwork for what we're going to be dealing with increasingly in the coming year and a half. So just you wait. Don't get too upset, because that South Node is going to come into Leo and it's going to balance this out as well. A fall from grace, a fall from a very high pedestal, even if one has climbed up onto that pedestal themselves, it still needs to be set up by getting something up on that pedestal, right? So that is something to keep in mind. We're going to see a lot of big falls later in the year here. There's also going to be, in this moment, this full moon moment, and then also, again, increasingly throughout the coming year and a half, issues of nationalism, theatrics, saviorism, the almost, I would say, false valor kind of stuff, claiming credit for things that one did not do, claiming to be super courageous, claiming to be really special, claiming to make all of the rules, etc. And we're also likely to see a lot of the reverse victim offender kind of stuff going on too with this. So victimhood or blaming others, very reactive egos are coming up, and we'll probably see a major theme of that on the front end here with the full moon in Leo as well. But again, with the South Node coming through, there's a weird alignment that's going to come up in mid-November of 2026, where we're going to have Jupiter and Mars and the South Node all in the same degree in Leo. And that does look to me like a major overextension that's also built in with something of an ego death, where those who have bought into this extreme aggrandizement, either of oneself as an individual or one's national identity or any other identity, holding oneself up as superior, those errors are really going to be put on display in the coming year. So again, try not to fret too much if it doesn't under specifically this full moon. So I want to come back to this decan because it is certainly very relevant on a global level. Again, it's associated with the Six of Wands. Jupiter is the decan ruler here. So we have the Sun and Jupiter. When those two get together, they do tend to grandstand. They tend to really lift oneself up. And I was looking at Austin Coppock's book on the decans, and it was pointed out in there that the Picatrix speaks of the rising up of a man who is ignorant and vile. There are these notions of losses that can be transmuted into victories, as well as triumphs degraded to the status of defeats, especially by excessive self-celebration and other immodesties. One turns past successes into future defeats, that book says, which I thought was really interesting and fascinating to speak to the time that we're in. And get this, so the book, Austin Coppock's book, 36 Faces, also refers to, in this decan, there's privilege here and the potential to perpetuate a class of sin which only the strong have access to. It is thus the temptations of selfishness and cruelty which stain the triumphal nature of this decan, for nothing tests the character so much as victory. And that seems to be a kind of reference to the Epstein class here. So we may see some movement along those lines. I'm just going to throw that out there. It certainly looks like that. There are other ways that could be read into, relevant current events. But I pulled that quote because it just seemed insanely on the nose here. And with a full moon, there is visibility of this decan. There's visibility of that class of sin. And what's interesting about that too is this kind of sense that I was getting of this moon could also be perceived in some who are inclined toward this kind of an attitude as me against the world. So everyone is up against me, and I am going to try and defeat everyone. But again, there's that kind of reverse victim offender aspect to that kind of an attitude as well of, yes, everyone else is wrong and I can do no wrong kind of an attitude, right? And being willing to set against that any sort of resources that one has. So there's a major risk of arrogance and hubris and assumption of one's own grandness that is even in this full moon, which again, I'm saying, like, I don't think that we see the full extent of this quite yet because the South Node isn't there yet. We're getting set up for an even bigger fall later, but there's likely to be some weird, embarrassing moments here around hubris, around exploitation of others, around turning victories into defeats. And then on the flip side, what appears to be a defeat turning into a victory through the arrogance of someone else, through the arrogance of the nemesis or the one that is on the other side. We are likely to see on the global stage a huge amount of self-aggrandizement and grandstanding, either potentially from populations, like, you know, these really strong statements from regular people, maybe out protesting or things like that. And there may be a grandstanding aspect to that because that is the moon there. And it will at times represent the fire and the courage of regular people and them getting worked up and making really strong statements, maybe about, you know, rights and values and civilization and things like this. But we could also potentially see that in leaders as well. And I think we'll see a bit of it on both sides, or many different sides potentially. There is also here, especially with this Aquarius focus, a lot of collaboration within civil society. So civil society groups getting some focus in terms of trying to keep things together and trying to figure out the way forward, given this new normal that we're going to be working with. We'll see some groups coming together, but we'll also see some civil society groups being built up in this moment or receiving a lot of potentially like negative press that actually winds up bringing in more support than was already there. I wouldn't be surprised to see that kind of thing. Community efforts, associations, affiliations that people are going to be contributing to around themselves. Also, notions of alliances are really big with Aquarius too. And certainly we can see that some are under strain right now, but that is likely to be very much highlighted here. A huge amount of discussion around who our allies are in any given nation. And what does that mean? And do we share values? Do we share customs? Do we have a set of rules and regulations and procedures that we follow in every case in order to not shake each other up too much, so that there's a sense of trust, collective trust within those alliances as well. But they may be shaken, they may be shifting, they may be changing also, certainly during this period of time, and that may be why they're coming into the discussion as well. There is a potential in this broader period of time for increased conflict and imposition, with Mars and Pluto still very close together under this full moon. So these two are together. They're also very close to the Sun, which is the ruler of this full moon, because the full moon is in Leo. The Sun rules Leo. So there is an emphasis on, again, the self-aggrandizement, but even the martialization or violence or imposition or exploitation, the cruelty, as Austin Coppock referred to here. We are likely to see an increase, a marked increase in that around the time of this full moon, and potentially for a little longer again. This triple conjunction here, just of these three, is going to play out from late January into about mid-February. So in terms of geography or national charts here, I looked at where this full moon is going to be on the angles, so on one of the horizons or at the midheaven, which is the top of the sky, or the Imam Kuli, which is straight down through the earth at the moment of this full moon in different places in the world. So that is true in DC, Philly, New York City, upstate New York, up into Canada area. And then on the other side of that, down into Brazil and Venezuela. As far as I know, that moon is rising and the sun is setting in those charts. We are also getting this through Sudan and Uganda. And that line should have the moon up at the top of the sky and the sun under the sky, because it should be in the middle of the night. We'll also go through Ukraine and Russia, Turkey and Egypt. And then there is another line which is running through Japan and Indonesia. And that should be a sunrise chart and a moon setting chart. I also looked at some national charts and charts of major figures. And this is going to be close to the sun of the Hiroshima bombing, which is weird because I do worry a bit about some nuclear discussions and things like that. So we may see developments with regard to nuclear weapons and discussion around nuclear weapons with that Mars-Pluto conjunction in Aquarius. It's also near this full moon is near the Mars of China. Also, these are near the ascendant and the moon of China. This moon is also on the Uranus of Cuba and France. This is near the ascendant of Iran, the Pluto of Israel and NATO, as well as the Pluto of Trump. And it's on the suns of J.D. Vance and Barack Obama, and the moon of Zelensky. And Zelensky has a ton of Aquarius and Leo in his chart. And again, like I said, this is going to be angular over Ukraine as well. So that may become quite relevant. So basically, all of that is to say that this is likely to have more of an impact when it comes to all of those different entities than on others that I didn't mention. So with that said, I think that is pretty much everything that I have for this full moon. It's definitely going to provide us a bit of a sneak peek. It'll look a little bit different this time than it will, as we get into these energies a bit more. There's certainly a bit of a difference between Jupiter and the South Node and Mars and Leo than having the moon in Leo. The North Node and Pluto in Aquarius is probably going to look a lot like this stellium. We're going to see, I think, a lot of that Aquarian energy continue to be significant across the board in a similar way as the stellium has been making it. But I'm definitely going to be watching this one closely for clues as to what's to come in the coming couple of years. So with all of that said, I do want to say thank you so much for spending this time with me. Again, if you enjoyed this and you don't mind giving the video a thumbs up or hype, I would really greatly appreciate that. And do consider sticking around by subscribing. We tend to look at the significant transits that are coming up. We look at it from a collective, a global, a personal level by looking at it from through sign by sign. So if that is something that you are into, I would love to have you here for future videos. And there's information in the description box below for personal readings, as well as membership perks like weekly forecasts, monthly sessions. And thank you so much to the members of this channel for your support. So thank you so much to Angel Niblock, JJ, Michelle Howell, Deborah Keel-Leavitt, Patrick McKenney, Jody, Anne-Marie, C. Rezer, Peace Out, Rachel Windholtz, the Z-Man 1291, Aya, Lynn Newman, Long T Standing, the Nelson Cat Maya, Connie DiMartino, Dolly Geezy, Mango JT, B Love, Startlingly True, Grace, Psyche Lloyd, Noah, Aquarian Antiquarian, Susan Martin, Chad W., Jonathan Mason, David LaRosa, Adrienne K., SP, Teresa Jones, Sherry Leas, Horse Dog Dog Notebook, Nioke Beam, Justice League Pie, Ashley Gonzalez, Create, Gales Tarot and Astrology, Talitha McKenzie, Kay from NH, Pitar Music, Nancy Imhoff, Peta Carlin, Sarah M. Cap, Angela Lazaire, Travis Dandro, Jane Bevan, Helena Fisher, MD, Tina Reynolds, Sacred Alpaca, Natasha P., Indy Loon, Susie Fetter, Linda Skull, Hernouche Amiri, Mari Garcia, D. Fish, Ellen McCormick Martins, Black Sheep Pink Unicorn, Summon 77, Attunement Tarot, Cookerzilla, Joshua Owen. I think I called you Coffeezilla. I think I did that last time, and I am sorry about that. That is a channel on YouTube that got in my head, and I think I just kind of glazed over with my eyes and said what I saw. J.A., Carrie Affronti, Mike, Lynn Ching, Kiska Kuznetsova, Linda Osborne, Denise Gould, Many Stars, EF, Nina K, Zoe, Plamena Molinova, the Muslim researcher Dante Hill, Cameron Walker, Larissa F, A. Neon, Marlo Murphy, Allison Arthurson, Janelle S, Danny C, Janet McCann, Gamin, CPT Alpha 12, Alina Bloomgarden, AC, Mina Dobras, NG, Sydney, Rebecca Cortez, Mike Jonesy Boy, Ricky Dandridge, Novocaine, Brandy Williams, Allison Elliott, Mason HKW, Adya Freya Willow Raven, Psychics and Mediums, M.A., Nat Catnip, Shane V., Jesse, Aaron Paterson, Shell Hawkins, Amanda Emmons, Brenda Tucker, This Is It, My Friend, Tracy Gerdine, Malcolm Sen, Sabrina Simon, JL, Grounded Fire, Shadow and Soul Revolution, Ethereal Material, Esther Swan, Theodora, Victoria Gordon, Corvus Cornix, Lizzie Willow, Emily Zoe, Kim Spina, Patricia Cogley, Rachel Y, Alex T, Bella, Pepe Ivanova, Ali Casanova, Ruby Payne, Valerie Hamilton, Elsie, Gabriel Pages, Blue Abila, Jody Gonzalez, Sunshine, Kat Alien, Nita Singh, Catherine Rose Conlu, Rebecca Fusetti, Anna Jordan, Roxette De La Cruz, I Hate 1988, Patricia Ewing, Sylvia C. 605, Abel, Anya G, Fiorina Martin, Jennifer Arena, Ren, Margox, Anna Cedarquist, and Madcap TV. Thank you all so much for your support. Much love to you. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into the sign by sign. All right, so for Aries, we have the full moon in Leo taking place in your 5th house. And we have this emphasis that's coming up on your 5th and your 11th houses. So as I mentioned, this full moon is going to be something of a preview of energies that are going to be building up for you and that you'll be dealing with for quite a while for the coming year and a half plus. So this is going to be a major emphasis on reclaiming a sense of joy and creativity and personal self-expression, boldness, excitability, enthusiasm, and trying not to let social expectations inhibit that joy, that passion. If you have children, this is also going to be speaking quite strongly to your children, your connection with your children. That's going to be strongly emphasized and for the most part, very well supported in the coming year, though there may be moments that we'll discuss when they wind up coming up where that can get a bit complicated or a bit overwrought, or there can be some butting heads a bit later. But it is going to be a moment where there's a huge amount of focus of yours on your relationship with your children. If you don't have children, this is just going to be around play, joy, self-expression, what you love, what you enjoy, and making room and holding space for that. So making time for that which you really love. And maybe even kicking off a creative or expressive project or something like this. And you may decide that you're wanting to do something that you will want to collaborate on. So again, I would really reinforce the messaging that I was giving around having a sense of pride in the contribution that you're making to a collective effort and to hopefully connect with others who are able to do that too. So connecting with people who really see what's unique and individual and eccentric about your ability to contribute, and that who are willing to recognize that for what it is, recognize the value of that and its place within the collective effort. There's going to be a huge emphasis here on friends as well, not just collaborators, but people that you really enjoy spending time with, or that you feel like you get something extra, you get a bit of a boost from connecting with them. That maybe you have, you're of like mind or like heart with people. You enjoy the same things. You have the same values. You're working toward the same causes or the same ends. Those kinds of connections are going to be really emphasized as well in the coming year and a half or so, and particularly around this full moon. But again, we need to keep in mind the collaborative aspects of that with the personal passion aspect of that. We don't want to lose the spark by trying to inhibit it or trying to make it fit what other people are expecting it to be from you. You can only make your contributions really well. You can't make the contributions that someone else is imposing that you have to do, in a way that's going to keep the passion alive for you and keep that spark lit. So keeping in mind why you're doing what it is that you're doing, why it is that you love what you love, and hopefully continuing to do that, again, just for the sake of it, just for the sake of the joy that comes from the projects that you're involved with. This can also really have you taking people under your wing and leading people through your sense of courage and authenticity, through your willingness to express yourself, to have a strong voice. You may be utilizing your voice a lot in around this full moon, but also again, for some time coming up here, for people who you feel don't have a strong enough voice. So putting yourself out there to help other people, to represent other people, and to make people feel very well supported. But yeah, that's initially a lot of what I have for you, Aries, for now. These are really nice houses. These are wonderful. The 5th house is where Venus rejoices. The 11th house is where Jupiter rejoices. These are generally good aspects of our lives, our social connections, as well as our passions and pleasures and things like this. Our childlike nature, willingness to get excited. So it looks like a very social time coming up, a lot of contribution, a lot of creativity, a lot of heart, a lot of courage getting driven up, especially courage to be yourself socially and to not hold yourself back, to be uninhibited. So yeah, I hope that those themes make themselves pretty clear in this little preview that we're getting here. I hope this full moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Taurus, we have this full moon in Leo taking place in your 4th house. Your 4th house has to do with home and family, your emotional core, your emotional roots, your private life, etc. And this is playing a part in a major emphasis that you're going to have on that house, that 4th house, but also the 10th house, which is opposite to it, where you have Aquarius. And so these are the themes that are going to be coming up around this full moon, certainly, but also increasingly in the coming year and a half or so. And that's just basically because a lot of the planets are going to be coming up and emphasizing these areas. So there is going to be a major focus on your home, your roots, your family. There may be a lot of effort and energy that is going to be called on for those. I would say especially toward the end of the year, that's really going to wind up ramping up a lot in terms of the energy that you're pouring into home matters, family matters, things like that. And maybe doing a lot of emotional purging and processing of strong feelings along those lines. That's going to get stirred up a bit now, and you may get a strong preview of maybe why that's going to be happening or something like this during the full moon. But I do want to point out that because you're going to have the Mars and Jupiter and the South Node all there together, and that is a huge emphasis on family. There's also going to be this connection between these houses, which is likely to have you feeling a sense of a need to redefine success so that it aligns to your sense of the life that you're wanting to lead. So what do you want your private life to look like? Well, your public life has a huge impact on that. And so it's likely that you're going to be focusing quite a bit on achievements and accomplishments and things like that. You're going to be pushing yourself to new heights, especially again, as we get the North Node joining Pluto long term in that 10th house of yours. But a lot of the adjustments that are going to have to be made will be with regard to, do you really feel deeply fulfilled with the work that you're doing and with how you're showing up in the world? And also there may need to be some adjustment to your home or family or private life situation due to success and achievement that you're having out in the public world as well. So these houses are going to start to flow together quite a bit. This is also likely to push you outside of a comfort zone when it comes to leadership. And this full moon could provide some sense of if there are any patterns where you do play small, or you feel like you show up best maybe one-on-one or something like this. Anything that seems to hold you back from really reaching as far as you feel like you could in your public life, this can shed some light on that and clarify some of that before we really start to emphasize these houses big time later in the year as well. So I would recommend looking at where is it that you play small? Where is it that you hold yourself kind of down and back and a little bit shy? Holding in and probably looking at that from a perspective of really enjoying privacy and a sense of security and feeling inwardly secure, but maybe not so much outwardly. And this would be shedding light on where maybe that misstep could be or where that mismatch might be. This can also be shedding some light on family dynamics around what success means, what's expected of you, what kind of authority position you should be in, how visible you should be in the world, etc. So the family dynamics and the family expectations around success are also likely to be really highlighted by this full moon, and part of the reason why you're going inward and you're looking at your emotional core and your emotional roots and how that impacts your success as well. But really, this is about aligning your heart and your roots, your core, what you deeply believe in and what you deeply feel is who you are again, on an emotional level, on a spiritual level, on a soul level, with how it is that you're showing up in the world. So trying to get that in as close of alignment as you can throughout this whole broader period of time, but definitely getting some insight onto that during this full moon here. So how is it that you can have more of a soul-centered or heart-centered public role? Or how can you inspire yourself, encourage yourself along those lines toward a sense of greater success as well? So that's a lot of the stuff that's going to be coming up. I'm going to be covering this kind of stuff a lot in the coming year or so, reinforcing some of these messages, tweaking them when we're dealing with slightly different energies coming up. So definitely feel free to stay tuned. But yeah, you're about to have eclipses in these houses. You're going to get a big Jupiter opposition to Pluto in these houses. Again, you're going to have that Mars going retrograde in that fourth house of yours. So there's going to be a lot of increase of emphasis on these areas. And so I think that taking this little preview that we have during this full moon in Leo should be really helpful to showing what some of the seeds of that are going to be. But yeah, I hope that this full moon treats you super well, Taurus, and thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Gemini, we have the Leo full moon taking place in your third house, which has a lot to do with your communication, your connection to people, places, things around you, your community. This is a place of like personal verbal expression, especially writing, the media that you take in, your opinions. And this is playing into an opposition to your ninth house, which is also going to be very much emphasized in the coming couple of years, along with your third house. But this is getting highlighted by this full moon as something of a preview. And your ninth house has to do with kind of higher mind aspects, so your worldview, higher education, travel, the expansion of your boundaries as opposed to the comfort zones that we can get into in the third house of our community and that which we're familiar with. So there's a lot to do with your place in the world, what you're familiar with, the expansion of your horizons, communication, learning, teaching, and publishing, things like this across this axis that's going to be really emphasized in the coming couple of years again. So this full moon should be helping you to speak with a lot of confidence. This should help you with any sort of creative or writing projects that you have to do so with a lot of heart and courage, and to, kind of pour your heart into your writing or pour your heart into your expression during this period of time. So you may have some lively, but probably pretty fun conversations with people. I can't bar that there would be maybe an argument here, but for the most part, it should just be enthusiastic connection and communication and exchange with other people. You may find yourself a bit busier with connecting with people as well. So when it comes to your everyday plans, those are likely to see a boost, while your long-term vision for yourself, again, how it is that you're trying to expand in the world, the experiences that you're trying to set yourself up for down the road, those are going to be reinforcing each other, but you're probably going to have a big emphasis on both. So you may find that you're quite busy, especially mentally, in terms of planning. So planning your day, probably trying to make it a bit more efficient as well, but also trying to plan in some longer term ideas that you have for yourself about exciting things that you're wanting to do and get into, and strategizing how you're going to make that happen. Additionally, this full moon in particular, and then Jupiter and Mars and the South Node are going to be in this house in very pretty loud, like significant ways later in the year. It's going to personalize your voice. You may, as a Gemini, be able to present yourself at the very least as somewhat more neutral than most people are, or possibly even a bit more neutral than you actually are, because you're able to look at things from multiple different perspectives. But this is giving you a lot of permission to really look at things from your own perspective and to share of yourself in a very personal way and in a very individual way, and to represent yourself rather than always feeling the need to balance how you represent yourself with how you consider others in the picture as well. So what is it that you want to express? How is it that you want for your day-to-day life to look? What are the things that you are wanting to reach for in your life? Try not to feel the need to play that small. just out of consideration of other people. Now, I'm not saying necessarily to go out and just be selfish, but this is a really wonderful moment to truly be yourself and express your ideas and express your desires in a way that's really authentic and, again, very heart-centered. Learning and teaching is also likely to be a pretty strong, big thing that's coming up for you in these coming couple of years. So you may get something of a preview of that during this full moon. Maybe you're taking a course, maybe you are getting into like studying some topic or digging into it, learning more about something, and you may find yourself teaching that at some point down the road, or at least publishing about it, putting your perspective on what you're taking in during this time out there into the world as well. If there is, by chance, a teaching opportunity that's coming through for you, given this big stellium that you have going on right now in your 9th house, I would expect for that to blossom. That's probably not going to be a one-off thing. Also, any sort of travel opportunities, anything that's going to be pulling you out of a comfort zone, but encouraging you to take yourself as you truly are with you outside of that comfort zone. So not feeling the need to go and do something new and then become that kind of a thing or fit into that kind of a thing, but rather develop your range of experience as just broadening yourself and growing yourself. I hope that makes sense. Try not to take the world as an imposition upon you. You can reach out into it while still just being yourself, right? You can learn things while not needing to belittle the knowledge that you already have. So really then aligning your voice, aligning your expression, aligning your perspectives, your opinions, your worldview with your own beliefs, not trying to fit that into what your audience thinks of you or what it is like, what it looks like you're supporting. There's this real strong awareness of the world and the fact that you are just one part of the world up in the 9th house. And that's wonderful. That can also help so much with a sense of collaboration with others. But try not to lose that kind of fun-loving, just enjoying things, being pretty lighthearted, representing yourself, not feeling the need to take on everyone else's, concerns and considerations as equal to your own, but rather as just a component within a bigger picture. And therefore just being really authentic and showing up for yourself through this period of time. Yeah, big time travel, learning, teaching vibes going on. I think that's going to become a pretty big theme for you in this coming year. And again, you may get a big preview of that during this full moon. So yeah, I hope that this full moon treats you super well. It looks to me like it's pretty good from your alignment. So I hope you enjoy it. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Cancer, we have this full moon in Leo taking place in your 2nd house. And this is the house of value and of resources, security, and safety that is quite personal for you. So your own values, that which you bring to the table, which is very valuable, your sense of self-worth, the resources that you have, both tangible and intangible, that which contributes to your sense of safety, security, stability, including your skills and your talents and things like this that you're good at, that which you bring to the table. And that is opposite to the stellium right now up in your 8th house in Aquarius. And there's going to be increased emphasis upon these houses along this axis for you in the coming year and a half plus because of the way that the planets are about to move after this full moon as well. So you're getting a bit of a preview of this really strong encouragement and emphasis on reclaiming a sense of self and defining for yourself your value, what you care about, what you consider important and significant. You may be kind of financially or materially or even emotionally consolidating a bit through this period of time and focusing very strongly on what you really care about. So what aspects even of yourself do you genuinely value? And how can you honor and respect those even more? So reclaiming a sense of self-worth that is rooted fundamentally in you and not in your connection to other people or other things, right? Developing really strong roots of your own passions, your own care, your own consideration, your own safety in yourself. Now, like I said, the consolidation aspect of this, some of that's going to be tangible, some of that's going to be financial, and you may want to like rework some of your financial commitments or your financial priorities, your budget, things like this, so that you can have the level of security and stability as you define it for yourself. Now, this may not look like trying to keep up with the Joneses. It would actually kind of precisely not look like that. It would be very much self-defined. What do you want? What do you value? What makes you feel safe and what makes you feel secure? Developing that rather than just, maybe growing a bank account or, taking out loans for things. You may be the type that would rather have a loan paid off than having like the newest of a car or a phone or something like that. And so if that's the case, I could see you also really focusing throughout, like right around this full moon, but then also in the coming year and a half on detangling or disentangling yourself from loans or commitments to other people when it comes to like material entanglements, but also karmic ties and energetic entanglements. So kind of stepping back from the notions of the value of other people or the value of your connections. It's not that we want to devalue that, but we want to come back to like first priorities, and especially when it comes to how you're defining these things for yourself. What kind of connection do you want to have with people? What kind of karmic ties do you want to be developing with people? If you feel like you're in a connection that's a little bit off, you may be kind of developing karmic ties that you don't want to have, So that may be something that you're really wanting to, again, disentangle during this full moon, but also, and the stellium that you have up in your 8th, but also in the coming year and a half or so. And it's interesting because you're probably going to feel increasingly like you're able to step outside of survival mode through a greater sense of self-reliance and defining for yourself what's important and valuable for yourself and developing those resources. So earning those resources, stowing them away or putting them into things that you really love, having a lot of confidence in yourself to be able to produce the things that you're wanting, that you enjoy and that make you feel good. But being able to get out of the survival mode of, I don't know when someone else is going to crop up, either needing my emotional labor or my actual labor or my money or something like that. Like there can be this pattern that we get into of expecting something to go awry and kind of staying in that active kind of survival mode. And this is giving you permission to really try and step out of that by lowering the potential for surprise or demand from other people. You may need to disentangle yourself from some people, or again, a loan or something like that by paying it off, to get those kinds of things a bit more out of the way, And then also just not needing that external validation. I'm sure that you've had a lot of experiences like this, Cancer. I feel like I've been having this discussion with you guys for a little while because we've been talking about Pluto and the stellium and everything like that, and how you've had a bunch of energy move from your 7th house into your 8th, and how you've internalized a lot of lessons around external validation and how it can actually become invalidating. When we don't have full control over that, it can kind of turn on a dime. And so definitely having learned a lot of those lessons, this is going to be reinforcing those throughout this period of time. And really, again, leading with self-respect and shared dynamics, leading with your values and not feeling the need to fit them into someone else's picture, but rather letting people meet you where you are at, I think is going to be the name of the game during this full moon, certainly, but again, in the coming year and a half plus as well. And we're going to continue to talk about that as the nodal axis gets closer to shifting signs. We'll be discussing that when Jupiter hops into Leo, etc. So yeah, in the meantime, I hope that this full moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Leo, we have this full moon in Leo in your 1st house. So this is really about you, your sense of yourself, your sense of your place in the world, your role basically in the world, how you relate to other people, the types of people that you relate to, etc. So this is going to be fundamentally relational for you. This is a very relational axis in the chart. You have this big stellium out in your seventh house, which literally has to do with the people that you are in close connections to and how you basically handle your relationships, what you're wanting from your connections with people, etc. So what you're looking for in other people, the types of people you tend to connect with, and the people themselves tend to be represented out in the seventh house. And as I mentioned, Pluto's going to be staying there in that seventh. You're going to get the North Node in there. You're going to get Jupiter in your first house along with the South Node. There'll be a big Mars retrograde a bit later. But this full moon itself is giving us something of a preview of that axis being really strongly highlighted in the coming year and a half plus. So for you, again, this is fundamentally about you and your personal goals, those that you're connected to, whether they are quite what you're looking for, whether they are supportive of you, whether you feel supportive of them, etc. So a lot here about your sense of self and in relationships with other people, how you value yourself relative to other people, how you connect with others, your priorities and your relationships, especially any groups that you feel you belong to, even your sense of belonging. Do you feel like you belong right now? And is there maybe a shift or a change that is being highlighted as necessary to make for you here shortly, that may be pointed out by this full moon in order to better reflect yourself? Like, are the people that you connect with, do you feel like they're a good influence on you? And I don't just mean, in the teenager-ish kind of a way, but do they encourage you? Do they tell you that your ideas are good, that your personal goals are important, or do they tend to pull energy away from your own personal goals? These are really important questions to be asking through this period of time, especially again, as it's setting you up for such a long period of time of this being an area where you're going to see a lot of movement and you're ultimately going to have to redefine this whole thing going on. So how is it that you can create more space for yourself within your connections to other people, to be an individual, to be able to be free, to be able to be authentic, and still feel like you belong with those that you're connected to? This may require at some point, you're going to be getting eclipses in these houses. You may have some relationships step away, like you may disconnect from some people. In fact, later in February even, you have a solar eclipse in your seventh house. And that can certainly speak to either very significant connections that are going to be long-term coming in, or releasing some connections that you have either to individuals or groups. But ultimately, other people, it shouldn't feel like other people are defining you for yourself, or your value, your significance, what you're capable of doing, what your potential and possibility is. That should not be defined from the outside. And it also shouldn't necessarily be sought in the outside either. Like, you aren't just the people that you're connected to. You have potential and possibility way beyond all of that. And maybe even by pursuing your personal goals to the fullest with all of your heart. Again, especially as Jupiter in the summertime moves into this first house of yours, that's going to be encouraging a huge amount of courage and bravery when it comes to pursuing your personal goals. You can wind up being a really strong inspiration to those around you as well. So what is it that you're wanting to do? This full moon is going to be bringing that up in a very significant way. Who is it that you're wanting to be? What do you feel like your potential could be? That Neptune up in your ninth house is also going to be asking these questions in a really supportive way. There are no limits to your potential. That's what that Neptune is really going to be telling you. And is it going to pull you down multiple different paths, some of which you may not stick with? Certainly, and that's totally fine. This is really about enjoying life and living life to its fullest with a lot of these alignments that you're getting coming up here. So connecting with people who really honor your authenticity and not just what you like, how you can serve them, right? So that's going to be a huge red flag to watch out for, because this is about you reaching for a lot, whatever it is that you're wanting. And we can't do that if we just always have people around that are placing a bunch of demands on us. So balancing out that collaboration in an equal way, making sure there's an equal kind of a give and take, which is something that you would certainly value anyway with Aquarius in your seventh house. and being able to express yourself boldly and courageously without fear of ostracization, but also then being willing to hold the space for other people too as well. This would be a really wonderful time to let that aspect of you, that Leo aspect of you that is very affirming to others and very warm and very encouraging, to be on full display with this full moon in that house of yours as well. That should sow some really excellent seeds for the way that these houses are developing for you in the coming year and a half or so. But yeah, this one is a very awesome alignment for you, Leo. So I really hope that this full moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Virgo, we have this full moon in Leo taking place in your 12th house. And this is a very private, personal house for you. This is basically your inner world, as well as your very, very, very private world. So the kind of sanctuaries that you create for yourself, the time that you spend just in your own mind and in your own thought that you don't necessarily share with other people, your spiritual practice, your psychological and emotional like depths and patterns, your psyche, your subconscious, your dreams, like that whole deep, deep inner world that even is a bit difficult sometimes for us to access ourselves, but certainly that we don't technically share a whole lot with other people. So that's going on there. And that's going to be very supportive of your inner world. But we also want to keep in mind the context of that, which is we have this big stellium going on currently with your 6th house, which has to do with routine, as well as service to others, the tasks, the like mundane, everyday stuff that you have to do out in the world, around your house, errands, etc. And also, again, service to others, especially. And these areas of your life, not only are they getting emphasized by this full moon in Leo and the stellium that's concurrent with that full moon, but the nodal axis is about to align with that. So all the eclipses are about to be in these houses as well. You're going to get Jupiter moving into Leo. Pluto's going to stick around here in your 6th house. You're going to have a big Mars retrograde late in the year and into next year out in this 12th house. So there's a huge amount of emphasis here, and there's going to be an overarching theme that is kicking off around this full moon in Leo around needing to balance the richness of your inner world and your private life and your private desires and your sense of spiritual connection and that which is going on within you with that you're needing to do out in the world. And that sense of duty to those around you, to be of service to others. There's also going to be a lot of energy for a sense of compassion and wanting to be of service to other people. But again, I would just caution a little bit at any point in this whole process with overdoing it such that you are draining yourself or that you are just fully backburnering yourself for a sense of service to other people, because we do want to enable you to have rest, recuperation, rejuvenation, and just kind of retreating, being able to retreat, being able to introvert and kind of chill in your own space and not need to worry about what's expected of you. Really important in the coming year and a half plus, you try to make time for that, to retreat, to spend time on your own, to recharge your batteries quietly. So really reconnecting with that private world for you. Again, maybe literally creating a sense of sanctuary in your bedroom or in your garden or something like this, a place that you can go and be alone and just think things through and process what you've experienced, because you're going to be getting so much done out in the world as well. And some of this is probably going to be very encouraging of developing spiritual practice or deepening your spiritual practice. You may feel like the world is full of a bit more wonder, especially as Jupiter goes into that house. That can really bring some magic into your inner world and enable you to see things through that lens of the inspiritedness of the world that you're connecting to and the spirit that is within all of your efforts and the energies that you put out into the world as well. So wanting to do the tasks that you have to do with heart. And a lot of these energies are going to help with that quite a bit. So coming from a place of creativity and inspiration and create, like saving some of that for yourself, definitely, but also funneling a lot of that into your sense of duty. So, when you are organizing your home or cleaning your home or doing the dishes or whatever, to be able to put that within a bit more maybe of a whimsical kind of a context, or recognize the fact that you're taking care of yourself, as a human being, and that there's beauty and magic in that, even in itself, Also, a real need to rebalance any sort of routines that have gotten out of balance. So when it comes to, this is like work-life balance, but on a deeper level, where it has to do with like spiritual burnout can come through in the 6th house, 12th house axis. So if you've been feeling burnt out, if you've been feeling like you are just pouring way too much energy, like there's no time for yourself, if you feel like you are pushing yourself to a point of lowered vitality or health issues, this is going to be really important to balance. Try not to let having too much to do drain the joy from your life as well, or to suppress your inner world. I'm even looking at this as like working your rear off out in the world. And then what I do sometimes as a Pisces, we have similar energy, Pisces and Virgo, is sometimes I will find myself getting into a pattern of being like, all right, I'm done with like the too much work that I had to do today. And now I'm just going to watch Friends for a while and fall asleep. Whereas typically I do feel a lot better if I create time for like writing or creative projects or things like that. And so again, trying to maybe even schedule that. The 6th house can be really good at organizing your time. And maybe you want to carve out specific periods of time to just be, and to not be necessarily consuming a bunch of media, but to just be able to process your thoughts, to feel your feelings, and to get back in touch with your spirit, your soul, your body, your mind, Again, a huge amount of desire to be of service, of desire to be compassionate towards others. So maybe this has to do with community efforts or like mutual aid efforts. This can be like taking care of people who need help, who are around you, or even on a spiritual level, encouraging others, inspiring others, offering people moral support, I think is also going to be a major factor here, and something that really motivates you. But yeah, again, just allow for that restful time, for that retreat, for the time that you spend in your imagination, in your mind, in your spirit, to fuel your productivity, and infuse a bit of that even into the mundane, kind of boring tasks that we have to do day to day, remembering the fact that we're reproducing our lives when we're doing those things, that maybe when we're offering customer service, we are actually connecting. It's so cut and dry when we look at these things in a corporate way, or in like a work kind of a way. But you are genuinely connecting with another human being, and you have an impact on their day, when you're connecting like with a client or a customer or something like that. So really bringing a sense of heart into your daily work, but also a sense of heart into your wellness. So what is that routine? Try and take really good care of yourself. That is important. I know, again, I can only, I guess, speak for myself, but I tend to back burner the heck out of that way too often. And it's really important. And for you, it's going to be especially important around the time of this full moon, but then also, again, increasingly in the coming year and a half or so. But yeah, I do hope that this full moon treats you super well. I hope that you get some nice rest. There may be a little bit of insomnia, I hate to say. Given the full moon in your 12th house, you may have some really rich dreams that kind of keep your mind going, but do try and create time and space for restfulness in any case. And yeah, thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Libra, we have the full moon in Leo taking place in your 11th house. And this is the house of the social groups that you connect with, the groups that you feel that you belong to, your social connections like friendships and networks, colleagues, society, generally speaking. So aspects of your community can come into this place as well. But even things like the field that you work in or the scene that you run in, that shows up here. So a big part of our sense of our role within society as well as some aspects of conformity to those groups can come in through this place. And we're definitely going to discuss that here in a moment. But that full moon in Leo up in that 11th house is also in opposition to this big stellium currently in your 5th house. And there's going to be a bunch of, oppositions and highlighting of this axis in your chart of the 5th house and the 11th house. We're about to get eclipses pinging back and forth across these houses for you for about 2 years. And as well, in this coming summer, you're going to have Jupiter moving into that 11th house, opposing Pluto, that's going to be hanging out in this house for a very, very, very long time. You're going to get a big Mars retrograde coming up in that 11th house as well. So it's going to be great to look at this full moon as a seed of what's to come in terms of a thematic focus for you in the coming, year and a half, couple of years, etc. So what does that have to do with? The 5th house is your authentic self-expression, your creativity, that which you genuinely love and are passionate about. This is where we can be playful, where we can be uninhibited, where we can be childlike. This is where a different aspect, in my view, of friends comes through. This is friends that are just friends because you love them, because you connect with them. In the 11th house, we can get those friends of convenience, colleagues, the people that you work with. Of course, you really enjoy connecting with them, you enjoy dealing with them, and you consider them a friend and, et cetera. But would you be friends with them otherwise? Maybe not. So those kinds of associations or affiliation kinds of relationships show up in the 11th. But friends are really important on both sides. And friends can help us to connect with the things that we love, but they can also introduce some peer pressure, whether intentional or not. And that's one thing that I tend to emphasize when we're dealing with the 5th, 11th house axis is that we can get a bit inhibited. And that is then a bit diminishing of the 5th house. Now, we also don't want to let the 5th house totally trample all over the 11th house, as in being so much ourselves and so concerned with our own pleasure that we're like hedonistic to the point of not being fun to connect with from other people, So it is a balance, but that balance is going to be important. And I do feel like most of us tend toward inhibition rather than, full-on hedonism anyway. So this full moon, and then also the way that the energies are going to be aligning here, they're going to be emphasizing your visibility and your leadership. And I wouldn't be surprised if you're going to be pushed to put yourself out there and maybe even put some creative work of yours out there, a passion project, to let it be seen. So if you are a creative type, I think you might be sharing of that in the coming little while here, and it's very well supported. You should be sharing of any sort of, creative work that you do. Put it out there because you're likely to get a really excellent response and maybe even to inspire others with that. And you may even find that then that feedback loop of being creative and being authentic and putting it out there and getting a good response and having that encourage you to be less inhibited, put it out there, etc. That feedback loop could become a major source of pleasure for you as well, of inspiring others to also be uninhibited and just be themselves and do their thing, and to be creative and to live their passions and to let that be seen. Now, there may also be a huge thing here about if influence over children is somehow significant for you, be this your own children, if you are a teacher, if you have nieces and nephews that you have a lot of influence over, this is also going to be encouraging, creating a nice, pleasant flow of support and kind of taking them under your wing and teaching them to value their own authenticity, to value their own creative skills, and to share of those gifts themselves as well. So that is something to keep in mind here. But again, this is really going to be fundamentally for you about sharing of your gifts without needing, yet still, I'm quite sure you're going to get approval from the outside and validation from the outside. This can also have you taking really meaningful experimental risks creatively too. Pluto in Aquarius is going to be in that 5th house of yours for like 20 years. And that's going to be encouraging the heck out of being just totally honest creatively, expressively with who you are, with what you love, and to take those experimental risks. So that's something that is likely getting emphasized and kicked off, initiated in a really meaningful way under this full moon as well. Additionally, if you have been less social in recent years, if you have been feeling like you've been just kind of taking care of stuff, going through the motions, maybe COVID was kind of disruptive to some of the communities that you ran in or some of the, activities that you used to do with other people. This is also going to be reconnecting you with other people a lot too. So renewing a sense of friendship and belonging and collaboration, connecting with people. You're likely to have a busier social calendar around the time of this full moon, but then again, especially kicking off around the summer. And then, for a year or two after that. And if you have new friends coming in, I think that they're going to be more supportive of your joys, your pleasures, your passions, your creativity, your authenticity than connections have in the past as well. But again, keeping in mind that this is about creating a sense of balance between authenticity and the really good influence that you can have on people and that other people can have on you as well. So balancing out those group goals with the personal joy and pleasure that you get. So when I was talking about in the general reading as well, focusing on taking pride in the contribution that you are able to make to collective efforts, that is 100% fitting with these houses that are emphasized in your chart as well. And I would really reiterate that message to you multiple times over. But yeah, I think that that's a lot of what I have just for this from the full moon and Leo perspective. And we're going to be talking about this quite a bit as that nodal axis shifts, as we get Jupiter into Leo. So I'm going to keep reminding you about these kinds of things. And in the meantime, I hope this full moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Scorpio, we have this full moon in Leo taking place in your 10th house. And this is very much your public life, your reputation, generally your career, if you have a traditional kind of a career, but anything that you are setting out to accomplish tends to show up in the 10th house, your ambitions, who you feel like you need to be, like in the context of your life out in the world. So the mark that you're trying to make on the world. This is also a place of a lot of visibility, just generally speaking, so recognition in that sense. And this full moon itself is going to be opposite to a stellium that we happen to have going through Aquarius right now, which is in your 4th house. And these houses are going to continue to be highlighted for a while. We're going to get the nodal axis moving backward into that, and then you're going to get eclipses after eclipses in these two houses, pinging back and forth. And then mid-year, you're going to get Jupiter going into the 10th, opposing Pluto, which is going to stay in your 4th. You're going to get a big Mars retrograde late in the year and then into next year up in this 10th house as well. So these themes, they're going to be highlighted during the full moon, especially the need to balance the themes that I'm going to discuss here. But these are going to be overarching themes of major focus for the coming year and a half, 2 years of your life. So it's going to be important to watch what seeds are getting sown during this time and some of the little sprouts that you see coming up in these areas of your life around now, because you're going to be working with this quite a bit for some time. So the 4th house, your home, your family, your emotional roots, your deep private life. So public life, private life, home, family, and then career or outside world accomplishment ambitions, So one thing that is just straightforwardly going to come up as a major thing is going to be work-life balance. But it's going to go a bit deeper than that, certainly. It's going to be more along the lines of that shifts and changes with your home or your family are going to be impacting your career or your ambitions, your public life, and vice versa. So certainly, especially with these eclipses that are going to be coming up along these lines, this can point to property changes or moves that you have to do because of work or vice versa. So that is something to keep in mind. There may be changes in your family that is impacting your career as well. So maybe someone else is getting, a big promotion, but they have to move and you have to follow, or something along those lines. That's just a lot more likely when you start to get the eclipses going. But you may get word, or you may get wind of something along those lines with this full moon in Leo already. Now, one thing is, again, there's going to be a lot of emphasis on your visibility and recognition and leadership in the coming while here. So this is going to encourage you to step into those roles very confidently, to be very affirming and supportive of those around you when you are in leadership positions or authority positions over other people. Leading with your heart, leading with passion is going to serve you really well, as is making sure that your home and family environment is conducive to, for instance, you being rested for if you're needing to step up, if there's a promotion available, or there's a promotion you get, or there's a bunch of, opportunity for more clients, or again, increased visibility or something like this. Being well rested, feeling well supported by your family, feeling like you have a place that you can decompress at the end of the day, it's going to be really important to supporting that, from the bottom of your chart here as well. So try not to maybe neglect these questions about your family and your home and the state of that, because that is going to have a huge impact on your ambitions and your success and your accomplishments during this period of time as well. And there may be a bit of a struggle here with shyness, or some patterns of holding back, some patterns of being very private and not necessarily wanting to put yourself fully on display. That can totally be a thing for Scorpio, is just kind of, enjoying not super being in the limelight. But some of the moves that you're making in, the coming year and a half or two, they look to me quite beneficial, and like they will require some level of putting yourself out there and being visible. So it would be great to utilize this full moon to try to work on some of that, the comfort that you have around that as well, especially with regard to being authentic as you are being visible. So not feeling the need to assert a bunch of self-control over yourself when you're being seen, but rather kind of letting your heart be out there and being confident in that through this time as well. So really letting that emotional security develop through this time. The stellium that we have here ongoing, that's going to be helpful to that end, because it's going to be pointing to what is your emotional security, where is it rooted, how do you deepen it, how do you put a lot of willpower behind creating a stronger foundation for yourself when it comes to feeling like you're basically rock steady. The North Node is also going to be encouraging the heck out of that. So you're going to get a lot of support from the planets here around emotional security. But then let that, rather than becoming a comfort zone and a place to kind of escape the world, though of course, depending on the hour of day, that's totally fine. But let that fuel you. Let that fuel your ambitions, your accomplishments, your sense of value and contribution out in the broader world as well. So create that emotional security, but then let that fuel you out in the public world too, rather than just keeping you in that kind of safe space, even though that may be kind of tempting. This could totally even look like developing the type of emotional security that you would need to put yourself out there to look for a different position. Let's say for one example, if you're not thrilled with the job that you're in, the South Node coming up into that 10th house would be encouraging you to make a change and to let that kind of thing go. But maybe you're just a bit shy to put yourself out there and look for something else in the meantime in order to give yourself that security to be able to make that leap. But again, the convergence of Jupiter and the North Node up into this 10th house that's going to be coming a bit later in the year is going to give you a lot of fuel to that end. South Node, if I said North Node, I meant South Node, coming into that 10th house. Also, just being able to define success for yourself, not needing for that to look like what other people would say that should look like for you. That could also be really helpful to creating a public life for yourself and a public image for yourself that feels deeply secure and confident, and like you're able to really own it because it feels really right for you and it feels like it fits. It feels like you belong in that role. So again, a lot of conspiring energies here to put you in that position. There might be a move that's also associated with this, or some pretty substantial family changes that fuel this as well. But yeah, we're going to be continuing to talk about this as the nodal axis shifts, as Jupiter moves. We'll be discussing this throughout the whole year. So in the meantime, I hope that this full moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. Okay, so for Sagittarius, we have the full moon in Leo taking place in your 9th house. And the 9th house has to do with the expansion of your experience. So the expansion of your horizons, both internally and externally. So this is the place of higher mind, expanding your mind, wisdom, knowledge, learning, but also of travel and pushing yourself outside of comfort zones in order to, again, expand your range of experience and to broaden your life. So this is going to be emphasizing those themes for you, but this full moon in particular is opposite to a stellium that we have going on currently in your 3rd house. And this axis of houses, the 3rd house and the 9th house, are going to get strongly emphasized throughout the coming year and a half plus anyway. So this is the first spark of a major thematic focus that's going to be quite overarching for the coming year and a half or two. So the 3rd house is basically the places that are quite familiar to you, your community, the people, places, things around you, your day-to-day experiences. There's also some learning in this place in the 3rd house. This is the everyday mind. So your thought processes, how you form your opinions, how you express yourself, your conversations with people, etc., as well as your local environment. And the 9th house has to do with faraway places. So you can see how these have similar but very complementary and even occasionally opposite meanings in terms of the themes of these houses. So those are all going to be getting quite highlighted for a while here. So it's likely that there's going to be some opportunities that are going to be encouraged on that Leo side up in the 9th house for you to teach or to take a course or to publish your ideas, your thoughts, your knowledge on a given topic, or to put yourself out there to share of your wisdom and to create a space for yourself, create a bigger space for yourself in the world, and to expand yourself more and more into the world. You're really encouraged along those lines in the coming, year and a half plus, and under this full moon really kicking this off as well. So if there are any courses that you're interested in taking, this would be really encouraging you to do that. If you have considered teaching, or there are any opportunities that are going to be arising or have recently arisen with regard to teaching a course, this would also really encourage that. Publishing, be it videos or podcast or writing or book or, textbook or anything along those lines, articles, even just like putting yourself out there in social media or marketing or something like this, that is also really well supported and encouraged here. Again, this is about broadening you and your ideas and your mind and your experience out into the world. You're also likely to have a lot of focus on what do you think about things. So that may be shifting during this time or getting kind of consolidated, where your opinions are, and there may be some flexibility there, but there may be some crystallization as well of ideas and worldviews, knowledge, wisdom about, how things play out in the world and your role within all of that, forming and becoming more concrete, but also just being more of a focus, like thinking about what you think of things more, if that makes sense. And that's also probably going to be reinforcing this renewed curiosity and learning of wanting to know more, wanting to understand things more deeply, wanting to understand how these things in the world relate to you, relate to your life, relate to your ideas. So bridging that big vision, that worldview with the practical considerations of what does this have to do with me? What does this have to do with my ideas? How should I maybe shift or change some of my ideas given the new information that I'm seeking through this time and that I'm learning? Maybe you're even just in different kinds of experiences, and that's teaching you more about the world too, like I'll try and think of an example. Like if you are newly in an authority position and you are learning the ropes of how to utilize authority in a way that feels ethical and correct to you, then that can also be expanding your horizons, not just in the sense of being in a leadership role, but also in learning how to manage authority, maybe reframing some of your ideas about authority and the responsibilities that come with that and so forth. Maybe you're even changing your mind about the roles that you're wanting to play based on your experience, because that is broadening through this time. And even on that level, you can be sharing your wisdom through teaching others and showing others what these experiences are like. Another major theme that's likely to come through here is travel experiences. So broadening your horizons either in your immediate environment, so new stomping grounds, basically exploring different areas of where you live. This can be short trips, out of town that you're taking, more road trips, things like that. But this can also be foreign travel, even going on long trips or hopping around different countries, things like that as well. And finally, another theme along these lines, again, communication. So in the third house, it's a bit more mundane. It's how we communicate with other people. It's our voice, quite literally. It is what we write. It's our writing style. It's the content of what we write. It's the basic ideas, the building blocks of what we know and how we think. And then again, in the ninth house, we see the wisdom and the teaching and trying to create a structure around all of that in order to share of your wisdom and publish it and put it out there, disseminate it, basically. And so when it comes to how you communicate your regular ideas, when it comes to how you even think about your ideas, how you structure maybe your writing, how you edit yourself if you are a writer, that is shifting and changing through this time. The content of your conversations is also going to be somewhat more significant in terms of its impact on your ideas. And additionally, you may find yourself in these storytelling kinds of roles where, again, you're sharing of your experience and you're teaching other people either through publishing or through the richness of ideas and knowledge that you're disseminating through your conversations with other people as well. But yeah, I think that is a lot of what I have for you, Sagittarius. For this full moon in Leo, again, we're going to be talking about these topics ongoing because of the fact that the eclipses are going to be along these lines and Jupiter is going to be relevant here, etc. So definitely feel free to stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, I hope that this full moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Capricorn, we have the full moon in Leo taking place in your 8th house. And the 8th house is pretty complex, pretty interesting. It has a lot to do with our deeper connections with other people. So financial, material, karmic, emotional, psychological entanglements with other people, and the commitments and connections that we deepen and we experience with other people, and even other entities in the sense of debts and loans and things like that. This is also a place that has a lot to do with vulnerability and trust. Again, the karmic ties that we have to people, karmic debts that we have, the emotional and psychological patterns of some of our deeper connections that we have with people. So it is a complex kind of a place. It's often referred to as being related to other people's resources. But to me, again, that's much more esoteric, a lot richer than just loans and contracts and things like that, right? At the time of this full moon, we have a stellium that's also in your 2nd house, opposite to that. And this is going to be the first of a series of oppositions between along this axis in your chart of the 2nd house and the 8th house, as we get the eclipses pinging back and forth in the coming years across these houses for you. Pluto is going to stay in your 2nd. Jupiter's going to move into your 8th and oppose that. We're going to have a big Mars retrograde up in the 8th here, etc. So this is a little preview of an overarching theme that's going to be very significant and is going to really make a mark on where your focus is for the coming year and a half plus, basically. So that's what I basically want to set out here, is that you're likely to see an interesting kind of a blip along these lines in accordance with this overarching theme. This is also going to become more important as we go on through 2026 and into 2027 as well. With all of that said about the 8th house, what we have in the 2nd house is your own resources, your own values, what makes you feel safe and secure in and of yourself. And also, when it comes to your resources, again, this is beyond the material. This is more esoteric. It's a little bit richer. It's what are you bringing to the table? What are your talents and skills? And what is it that you bring to yourself in order to self-soothe, to make yourself feel safe, to make yourself feel secure? What is your contribution to things? What do you take pride in? What do you really value? How much do you trust yourself? How self-reliant are you? A lot of those questions show up in the 2nd house. So we're getting these themes really focused on quite a bit. Security, stability, trust, reliance, resilience, depth when it comes to your connection with yourself and with other people and the balance that comes into play there. So there is going to be some focus on developing trust with other people, developing collaborations with other people, deepening your emotional connections with other people. Hopefully, with Pluto in your 2nd, doing so from a place of personal power. So owning your own desires, owning your own values, owning your own sense of self-reliance and resilience, and that you are fine on your own 2 feet, on your own, and then building as kind of a cherry on top of that situation, trusting and reliable connections with other people where you're able to combine forces basically to create something that is, more than the sum of your parts, but to where it's not this kind of potentially suffocating like it can be over-reliance kind of a situation where you're looking to others to define your values for you or to define what you get to feel secure from, things like that, That's definitely something that we want to avoid when the 8th house is involved. Build up the trust, build up the resilience, build up the embrace of change, build up the embrace of vulnerability, but without handing everything over to those things, So specifically on a material level, let's go ahead and discuss that aspect, and then we'll go a little bit more esoteric again. When it comes to your income and your debts, your budget, basically, there may be aspects of taxes or, a loan that you're trying to pay off or something like this. That is going to be a major theme here, and that is going to be a major aspect of your focus, which you should be able to take some pride in as you go. So this could be a major milestone of paying down a big kind of a debt. Maybe this is the first car you fully paid off, or maybe this is rebudgeting so that you're paying more than you need to on a mortgage or student loan or something like this. This could also be you very much standing on your own 2 feet for the first time and having emotional connections to people that don't have any sort of material dependence baked in. So reworking those budgets, reworking that material aspect of your life so that you can be more self-reliant and that you can contribute to partnerships that are going to feel really good and feel really right, rather than that feel like they have some sense of ownership over you. So developing greater security by rooting it in yourself and then growing that outward into connection with other people. Budgeting, I think, is going to be a big aspect here. The 8th house can be where money goes out. The 2nd house is often where money comes in. So there's a call for balance there. And I would imagine that you are spending a lot of mental cycles figuring all of that out and figuring out what can you afford, what do you want to save for, what is it that you value in terms of what you're able to spend on, what is your spending style? Do you desire to have like a really big savings and that's what gives you security, or is it being able to provide yourself the things that you want on a day-to-day level that makes you feel safe and secure? Thinking these things through, there's not necessarily right and wrong answers. We're all very unique when it comes to what makes us feel safe and secure and how it is that we utilize material resources to that end. So defining that in as clear of terms as you can earlier on in this process, like under this full moon, should be really helpful as well. Now, on a more esoteric kind of a level. Again, the 8th house can be where we need to give up a little bit of control, or where we need to allow for ourselves to be vulnerable. And that can trigger trust things, trust issues. Often we look at that as trust issues with other people. I tend to look at that as it's kind of more of a trust issue with oneself. If you feel like maybe you're going to go overboard, if you're leaning on someone, maybe you're going to become dependent on them. But that's really a matter of, in that moment, are you responding correctly to the situation? If you find that someone isn't reliable and you find yourself in a position of kind of relying on them, are you able to embrace the change of letting that connection change in terms of you not relying on it as much? Like, is that something you're willing to do, or do you feel the need to try to white knuckle the situation into what you're wanting for it to be? You know, a lot of that actually comes from a sense of self-trust and self-reliance and personal resilience, and allowing, you know, for other people to be what they will and do what they do, and to bring to the table what they bring to the table, rather than trying to control that or redefine it, you know, or restructure it in a way that makes you feel maybe on the surface a little bit more safe and secure in the moment. But long term, you know, whenever we get dependent on a situation like that, it winds up becoming more complicated. So that, I think, is going to be kind of important to keep in mind throughout this whole process. But there is that encouragement of opening up again. So if these are lessons that you've learned, and hearing this is like, man, this whole thing again, well, maybe this is coming around to say, like, if you know about the red flags to watch for in yourself and in other people when it comes to dependencies and trust and things like that, then this could just be encouraging you, hey, you know what to look for. So maybe you could let the guards down. Maybe you can trust and connect and create mutually beneficial connections, like even material connections with other people. And maybe you don't need to be as cautious, you know, because the encouragement is definitely coming through on that Leo side, especially that, like, this full moon is going to be encouraging that kind of thing. But Jupiter especially, this summer, it's going to be going into that 8th house, and it will be saying, hey, are you able to open up to other people? You know, so you may get a bit of a blip here that's going to open up into a broader story in 2026 and 2027 as we continue. So yeah, just trying to find a way to really balance out your sense of self-reliance with the ability to open up to people, to be vulnerable with people, to trust other people to some extent because you trust yourself with other people. But yeah, I think that is a lot of what I have for you, Capricorn, when it comes to this full moon in particular. Again, we're going to be looking at this from a bunch of different angles as the year goes on, because it's going to come up repeatedly. So definitely feel free to stay tuned for that. But I hope that this full moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Aquarius, we have this full moon in Leo taking place in your 7th house. And this is the house of your one-on-one connections with other people, like those people that you connect with in a way where they feel like they are the other part of that connection with you. Be this a really good close friend, be this a romantic partner, be this a business partner, etc. It's those close connections that you have with other people. It's also how, like, what you look for in relationships, the types of people that you are drawn to, how you manage your connections with people. To some extent, it's how you relate to other people. And so that's going to be a major theme with this full moon. And it is opposite to the stellium currently that's going on in Aquarius in your 1st house, which is the house of you, yourself, your sense of self-image, your personal goals, how you interface with the world. So even your persona, how you connect with people. And so both of these this is like a fundamentally relational axis here between you and the outside world. So that's going to be the overarching theme here. And not only is this full moon in Leo going to be speaking to this, but as I mentioned in the general reading, this is going to become an overarching general theme that is a major focus for the coming year and a half, 2 years, basically, because you're going to get Pluto is going to stick around in that first house there. You're going to get the North Node then moving in there while the South Node moves into the seventh. Jupiter is going to wind up moving into the seventh house as well in the summer. And then even at the end of the year, this Mars is going to come all the way around, and it's going to wind up doing a big part of its retrograde in that seventh house too. So a huge emphasis, probably more so than really, any other axis in your chart along these lines. And the nodal axis, this is the eclipse points. So the eclipses are also going to be taking place in your first house and your seventh house for the most part, really for the coming couple of years. So the relational dimension of your life is going to become very important and redefined, basically rebalanced. So when it comes to your connections, especially under this full moon in Leo, there is going to be an encouragement to reintroduce a sense of heart into your partnerships. So open-heartedness, warmth, encouragement, support, being affirming to others, being loyal to others, really being just very, very, very supportive and being a safe space, taking people under your wing and hopefully connecting with people who also are very open-hearted and passionate toward you. So having that warmth, that passion reintroduced into your relationships throughout this period of time. That's already something that's very important to you with Leo out in your seventh house. To have bold and adventurous and exciting and passionate, heart-centered, excitable kinds of connections with people. But that is getting re-emphasized with this full moon and then again continually throughout the coming year and a half plus. So additionally, then this is going to be reflective of you. So who are you? What are your personal goals? Is your sense of self, your sense of confidence, your sense of your role in the world, and what you're trying to be in the world, is that well supported by the people that you're connecting with? You will probably see some people around you where that is a yes. But again, under this full moon and then in the coming months, it's going to be important to try to recognize when people are not being very supportive of that, because maybe those are connections that you don't want to, pour all of your energy and heart into if you're not quite getting that back. This is about, again, creating that sense of balance and that reflection in that feedback loop in your connections with people. So when it comes to your personal presence, your personal identity, your personal goals, making sure that those are being honored in your connections with other people too. And then hopefully that you are also reflecting a sense of encouragement to those that you're connected to them and their personal goals and so forth as well. Now, this is also going to be encouraging some level of collaboration as well. So another great reason to be connecting with people who are on the same page as you or who are encouraging your projects and your goals, because you may be able to partner up with some people in a really significant way where you're both able to make your mark, you're both able to make your contribution and contribute to some collective effort that is very supportive of your individual goals as well. One way that's going to be really good to check in with some of your connections is, do you feel that you are able to be authentic with people and still feel that you belong with them? Or do you feel the need to censor yourself or to hold yourself in a bit, even to play small or to hold yourself back so that you don't offend the egos of those around you or that they don't feel challenged or whatever it is? Can you really be your best self and your true self and still feel that connection is supportive? That's going to be a major, very important question to keep front of mind for, again, a year and a half plus coming. And that way you can create that sense of mutual recognition with other people, mutual support, rather than feeling like maybe you're in competition with the people that you're connected with, or that there's some sense of emotional distance, or that you have to have your walls up, or you have to have a mask on, or something like this. This is about really pulling down those walls, really being yourself, and finding your tribe, basically, and then collaborating with them toward things that you can get really excited and passionate about. But yeah, this is just going to be the first little blip here under the full moon. We're going to continue to discuss things along these themes for a while to come. So these messages that I'm telling you now, I'm going to be saying a lot of the same words for some time. But these are really great alignments, especially to be going on while you have Pluto newly in your first house, which of course I recently discussed as well. That is a big deal of a transit to have. But yeah, as this is all developing, in the meantime, I hope that this full moon in Leo treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Pisces, we have the full moon in Leo taking place in your 6th house. And this is the house of your daily routines, your working life, the things you have to do and take care of in your day-to-day, the tasks and things that you're working on, putting your effort and energy into, as well as your sense of health and well-being comes up across this whole axis here. And so those are going to be some of the themes that we're dealing with this full moon in Leo, but it's also going to be pointing toward the 12th house here, where under this full moon, we have a stellium out in this Aquarius house of yours, the 12th house. And this is going to wind up then infusing other themes of a richness of well-being, your own inner world, your emotional and psychological and spiritual depths, that which is going on under the surface for you, your private life, any sort of sense of sanctuary or a place that you may go or time that you may spend just in solitude, in rest and renewal and recharging, in privacy, maybe in spiritual practice. There's also a major emphasis along this axis with regard to compassion and being of compassionate service to others. So that whole thematic thing there is going to become an increasing overarching theme of focus for you in the coming year and a half plus. And we're getting this first little vision of that with this full moon in Leo. Just quickly, we will mid-year have Jupiter moving into Leo, and we will have the South Node moving into Leo as well. The North Node is going to join Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto's going to stay here. This Mars is even going to come all the way around, and then it's going to do a big dramatic long-term retrograde in this Leo house as well. So this 6th, 12th axis and the themes that go along with this, which as you can see are somewhat opposite but complementary and along similar themes of well-being, your emotional, psychological, physical health, but then also the things you have to get done and you have to take care of versus the time that you spend just restful, right? So those themes are going to become quite important, and we get a first little peek at this under this full moon in Leo. So it'll be worth kind of paying attention to the messages that you get along those lines during this time. So what is this speaking to? This is reinfusing your working life with the passion and creativity that is natural for you to try to have in that place. You may feel like you have gotten away from being enthusiastic about your daily tasks and things like this, your routine, your working life, your health regimens and things like this. You naturally, natally have Leo in your 6th house. So for you, it is going to be important that your regular stuff that you take care of day to day, your regular schedule, is somehow infused with a little bit of magic, a bit of passion, that you feel that the work and the tasks that you're doing are really meaningful. And there's been a huge emphasis out in your 12th house, and I hate to call you out, but there may be something kind of recently where if you haven't been feeling the spark, this Leo house hasn't been receiving transits for a decent amount of time. So if you feel like you've kind of lost the spark and that you're not as enthused about the day-to-day tasks and things like that, you might have been procrastinating a bit. This wouldn't necessarily like get on your case about that, but it would be saying, hey, are you procrastinating because you're not having fun in that day-to-day routine that you usually look for? Well, here's a bit of an infusion of it, and there's going to be more to come. So maybe let's kind of refocus on this area a bit. Let's try not to let too many tasks kind of slip by the wayside or get kind of set aside while you're trying to maybe recover from some burnout or something like this as well. So that's going to be an important thing to maybe kind of keep in mind around all of this, is that questions around burnout are going to be also more important in the coming year and a half or so. So it will be important to prioritize rest, solitude, spiritual renewal, psychological and emotional processing and releasing and understanding and so forth, so that it's not all kind of jumbled up in your day to day, but not letting that become a place that you get stuck, right? So not then letting that become a place of procrastination, that you don't want to do things out here, because you are actually, especially when Jupiter winds up going into the 6th house, that's going to infuse a lot more passion into your work, and you're likely to really enjoy what you're doing. So a little bit of a spark to get you through in the meantime. And again, a nice little reminder of maybe what burnout can look like and why to avoid it. So why to not go too overboard, which Jupiter totally can do. And like I said, Jupiter plus Mars plus the South Node are all going to be in that 6th house at the same time later in the year. And that's the kind of thing where you could go balls to the wall, burn the candle at both ends, overtime like crazy, and push yourself well beyond burnout. So try to, if you have struggled a little bit with burnout here and there, especially if you have recently, or you've just been wanting to spend some time on your own, check in, take that little note, put that on a little Post-it note, keep it in the front of your mind while you're getting more passionate again about your work and the things that you have to do, and feeling really good about your ability to take care of things, so that you don't overdo it, and wind up burning yourself out even more so. Additionally, when it comes to service to others, this can be emotional labor. This can be for you as a Pisces, with Leo in the 6th house, especially if you're a Pisces rising, you may find yourself doing a lot of emotional labor for people and cheering people up, and trying to be really encouraging to other people and so forth, but you might not always get that back, and you might not always be looking to receive that back, but there's still an imbalance there, and that can still be kind of tiring too. So if people have been leaning on you quite a bit, just try to keep in mind it is only fair that you also take care of yourself, and not just when you get so overloaded and overburdened that you wind up needing to kind of shut yourself away, like this major stellium in your 12th house would indicate you may have been doing recently, of really trying to pull back and get some rest. I wouldn't say don't do that. I would say that this alignment actually encourages that kind of thing, but keep in mind that spark will be coming back, and that once it does, it's going to be important to keep that balance in place there. So try to make sure you're not super overgiving to people who aren't returning the emotional labor and the encouragement and so forth, the enlivening kind of energy that you're providing to them. Try and make sure you're getting it back for sure. Additionally, when it comes to any sort of restructuring of your routines, you may be discovering that certain things have pretty much played out. You may have certain routines that are outdated that you don't really need to do anymore, that maybe you can make more efficient, that you can rework. And when you are doing that, for one thing, saving a little bit extra time for you to rest and relax. If you're setting up like a schedule or something like that, try and keep that like sanctuary time basically in mind for yourself. That's important for Pisces to have, generally speaking. And also try to do so kind of intuitively. You've got a lot of help from your 12th house, which is looking directly at a full moon illuminating your 6th house. So what kind of routine would work for you? What would feel good? What would keep the spark going while still getting everything done? That should be weirdly visible and weirdly apparent to you and accessible to you through your intuition, maybe even through dreams, like quite literally or something like that. You may get some download, that fills in some gaps of how do I structure my time in a way that's going to be really supportive of my well-being. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you with this first bit, this first full moon in Leo here. Again, we're going to be discussing this axis for you for a long time, because it's going to be staying quite super relevant, and I will point that out each time as that is coming. So feel free to stay tuned if that is of interest to you. And in the meantime, I hope this full moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me.